think I still have to find, I'm gonna wipe off my glasses, but my book is here and I hope I don't have all the interruptions of yesterday, but my book is here. Okay. Hi. Hi, I'm all late, right? I'm all late and it's crazy. It's a crazy day. And yesterday was a crazy day. And oh, my glasses are gunked. I remember having gunk on my glasses. And let me see if I can find something without getting up from my seat. So good morning to you. I am so glad that you are here and to be doing this. As you could see, I didn't get my hair done yesterday, and I found some little wipes from C Eyewear. As you could, I had a crazy day yesterday. I can't even tell you how crazy it was. So I had some issues the night before, Wednesday night, because I had taken my hair down and my hair was extremely matted, knotted from those braids I had in there. And so when I attempted to take it down, I was having all kind of problems. And so I didn't end up getting into bed until darn near 1 o'clock, and it was just exasperated. So then I slept late yesterday morning. And then after I was on here, I was supposed to go and have my hair, something done to my hair. On my way there, I was really close, maybe a couple of blocks from where my destination was. And there was some construction going on. Well, Sandra, I reasoned that if they didn't have the area all blocked off, then it would be okay for me to drive through, which is what I did. And I ended up encountering a manhole cover that was apparently way higher than my car was able to clear. And as a result, it knocked the oil pan clear off of my car. It was this man that was over at the other stop sign, because we both stopped at the stop sign, and he started screaming to me, "You knocked your oil pan off." So I stopped. I already stopped because it was like, what the hell? When I hit it, I had already stopped. And so I get out of the car and to look, and all I see is oil and there's some steam. And he's like, "Cut off the car." Thank goodness he told me that, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, my car I had to get it towed, and the company seems to realize that they should have had the area secured better, blocked off better, all of that stuff. So they are supposed to be getting some estimates, and they're going to make me whole. I'm claiming it. Yeah. So yesterday was one of those days. It was just, call it, I don't know what it was, but it was one of those days. And so I am thankful and grateful to be here this morning. I am thankful that even in the midst of what was going on, I kept thinking to myself and saying to myself that I know this is working out for my good, because I just got this feeling just like to just wait. And I don't know what it's supposed to look like. All I know is that yeah, I went through some stuff yesterday. My baby, my girl, my car is you know, it's just you know, I don't know what's going to happen with her, but whatever the case may be, this is a bump in the road, so to speak. And it'll work out. It'll work out much better than I can even imagine or hope for. And I thank you for being in agreement with me on that. Much better than we can imagine or hope for. So all is well. So today, good morning and welcome to you. I am so excited about being here and about doing this. I don't know how I like these things hanging on my glasses, but I tell you, it does make it so much more convenient. But now that I have those braids out of my hair, I could probably stick my glasses back on my head, which is where I normally assume that they ought to be perched. And so when I get my hair back together in some kind of way, and you know what, and I probably owe an apology to those people when I interjected my comments about those bonnets, because I hate seeing women walking around with bonnets on their head. But man, this difficulty, people, we get our hair braided, and it is low maintenance, it is freedom, it's getting up and not having to worry about all of that stuff. But it does a job on your hair. It does a real job on your hair. And I think when we don't recognize the trauma that we cause to our own hair through that, I always seem to forget. I get caught up. I forget. And then when I go, because, inevitably I try to get braids whenever I travel, because I don't have to worry about anything. I don't like wigs. I have a few wigs in there, but I don't like wigs. I like being real. There is something about me showing up as I am with what I have, that is wonderful for me. So, and then when you get that, you get braids in your hair, and it just, it wreaks havoc. And so I can understand why people walk around in that limbo stage with those hideous caps on their heads, those bonnets. I hate them, but I get it. Oh my God, I get it. So I have some of those, but I don't wear them out of the house. And so you guys, I am like I am today, and it is what it is today. So I am excited about getting into this, because I think that this the question about self-esteem is one that is so important. And I'm trying to figure out what page I was on. Why do I not have this marked? Yesterday we went to the end of the 3rd chapter. We read the questions, and now we are back here. And I think that we are still in this first section here. No, I said I was going to talk about the case studies that they did. For some reason, I don't have this marked off from where I finished up yesterday. So whatever the case may be, this is really good, because one of the things that we get to talk about is all the ways in which we block. In A Course in Miracles, I think I mentioned for you guys that part of what it says in the introduction is that the aim is not to teach the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does, however, aim to remove the blocks to our awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. And so I say that to say, is that the truth is love. When we heard this idea about God is love, the truth is love, like everything is love. And I'll tell you, we have gone through some dark periods in time, where, where, I mean, so much has happened in this world, to this world. And I think that so much undocumented and out of our awareness is some of the things that have happened. So we talk about the 1600s. We don't talk very much about, as we go back into antiquity, right? And we know that there have been other ages and other stages, but what we get caught up in is a lot of times just American history or politics or something like that. But we know that there was a time before all of that that would be considered, and I don't want to call it the dark ages, but because there was, humans didn't have a written language or something, they still had to have ways in which they maneuvered in this, on these planets. And so now that we have become what we call civilized, there is this, um, there is ways of managing the process, managing people, managing resources and money, all of those things. But if you can imagine that this is not the way that things have always been, that even humans didn't always live in these things called houses, that there were times before that. And so when we think about it, people aren't naturally born with these types of issues that we deal with. So, there was a time at which survival was the main thing. How do I survive? How do I find shelter? Those kinds of things were the issues. There was a time when we weren't able to go into the store and exchange money and get food. We had to actually farm those things. So we are in what we would call just a luxury. When you look at the history of the world, this must be a luxurious time when we are dealing with issues such as esteem and not survival. So if we're looking at the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy of what's possible, at the base level is food, clothing, and shelter, and then safety concerns and all those other things. And so what we're doing now is we're at the apex where we're really talking about something more. Well, self-actualization is at the apex of it. But, when you get a chance to sit back and just really think about esteem, how you feel about yourself, instead of just, some of the other things that people have historically been associated with, this is a pretty lush time. And so as we kind of work our way through this, keeping in mind that the changes in our culture and the changes, we weren't naturally born with self-esteem, right? This wasn't even on our Richter scale. And so now that it is, now that we recognize that it has an impact on how we show up in the world, and what we do, how we engage with one another, how we love ourselves, how we love others. I mean, could you imagine that there was a time where we couldn't necessarily pack on weight because we didn't have food like that? We didn't, if you got to go out there and get your own milk out of the cow, you know, who needs milk? I don't know. You got to grind up your own flour to make a cake. Really? Do I need a cake? Right? And just anyway, there are so many things when you think about it that we are dealing with. So so one of the things that she says in here is, given our particular body, environment, and beliefs, will you make choices that enhance your spirit or those that drain your power into the physical illusion around you, right? And so when you think about the things that you give your power over to these days, I mean, I guess I just wonder, I wonder about if we know how precious and how, how wonderful our power is, and just to kind of, give it over, or to relinquish it is an interesting thing. Yesterday, as I stood there talking to the police officers, because they called the officers on the scene in order to make a report and to have this incident documented for me yesterday, there was an officer who I engaged with, who, when he first came on the scene, he wanted to tell me about this being my fault. Well, they have signs posted. If you didn't read the signs, that's on you. And so, I was like, and I was just like that, right? Like, man, who brought you in here to be judge and jury of this situation? Like, did I ask you for how you assess this? I didn't go through all of that, but that was my thought. And I thought to myself, like, just like I was telling you, like, yesterday I activated my environment, right? My atmospheric Sandra. And I just pulled it all back within me and got into my place of knowing, and shifted my attention from him to the other people who were there on the scene that were part of the company. Because I was like, okay, thinking, I'm done with you, right? Because I'm not going to take whatever your negativity, your assessments of this, reject. Let me reclaim this. And so we all have this ability to know where our core is and to operate in that core, right? So that people don't pull you off center, that people don't get you activated by their stuff. And so that physical world, the world of illusions, that's not, that was not going to disturb my peace. So so she says in here, she says again and again, the challenges of the third chakra, that challenge of how we see ourselves, our esteem, it causes us to evaluate our sense of power, right? And the self in relationship to the external world. So that officer could have been like, just kind of like coming up to me, like, I'm gonna grab some of your power and I'm gonna pull it over here. Had I gotten activated, he would have been successful. But what I did is I'm pulling minds back to me, right? I'm gonna stand in my knowing. I'm gonna stand in my space. And I heard myself. I don't know if it was myself or what it was in the moment, but I said to myself, all things are working for my good. I'm proclaiming it right there. I'm gonna continue proclaiming it. And I want, please use that, right? To know that all things are working for your good. I'm going to show y'all this little story before I get into this good, because I think it's such a good story. It's about it's not a story, but it was about this cartoon. You know how in the cartoons in the newspaper, they got these little sections and each one of them have the little frames, and we read the frame, right? And so in this little cartoon, I don't know what cartoon it was now. I don't know. This woman went to India, and it could have been a woman, could have been a man. I don't know. I don't remember, but went to India to meet with a guru. And she goes in and she's like, she, goes all of this way, and she goes in to see the guru. She gets her little 5 minutes in front of him. And she says to the guru, I would like to know the secret to inner peace. And the guru looks at her for a moment and he says, it is that way. And he points that way. So the woman heads that way, right? Next frame, heads that way. So when you see when the next frame, she heads that way. And then all of a sudden you see this little box with these little, and it says splat. And so she comes back and, her glasses are all janked on her face, her hair is frazzled, her clothes are frazzled, and she's back in front of the guru, and she says to him again, but less enthusiastic, I came to you and I asked you the secret to inner peace. And she was like, please help me. And he says, it is that way. And so here she goes again. Off she goes, still hopeful. And you go and you see the next box, and guess what it says? Split. So now she's coming back and she looking like she broke down, like she done been to hell and back, you know? And she comes in there and she's like ready to grab this man. And she says, look, I came all of this way and I'm asking you because I want to know the secret to inner peace. Tell me the secret to inner peace. And the Gruber looks at her and he says, it is that way, but it is beyond splat. So it's beyond splat. And a lot of times what we do is we run into the splat and we get discouraged. We run into splat and we think, oh, we make splat so final. But when you think about it is beyond splat, that means that in the midst of it, you are going to run into manholes, right? You are going to have moments that just jar you. But you got to keep moving forward. It's like you got to move beyond the splat in order to get the blessing. So for me, and I hope for you, you will recognize how to stay in the atmosphere that is you, that atmospheric pressure that sometimes comes into your life, how to draw your power to you and stand in that. That does not mean that you need to go out and get physically brute and all of that stuff. Sometimes it's just standing in your peace. Like I'm standing there with a smile, like, you know, all right, I hear what you're saying. I'm gonna talk to these folks over here, right? Because I don't have any argument for you. I was like, you know, for a minute there, I was like sitting up there thinking, and I said to him, I said, is it because I am a woman that you should have, that, you know, that you're trying to insinuate that I should have known I couldn't cross that manhole cover? I was saying to him, I was like, you know, if it was exposed, if it was unguarded, I was like, I drive down streets all the time that are like that. And that has not been my case. As a matter of fact. So, you know, what's the responsibility of the company? And so he wasn't there to assess that. It was, they sent people out for that. So at any rate, it is beyond splat. I hope you remember that when you run into a splat. Okay. So she says, consider, for instance, a third chakra challenge of a person in a wheelchair. And the fact that the physical world is an illusion does not mean that that wheelchair does not exist or that the physical problem is not real. That's not what they're saying at all. So when we talk about this world as an illusion, it's not to take away from your experience of what you're going through. It's just that what you're going through doesn't become the truth of the matter, or it's not the point of the matter, right? So let me read what she says, and then I'll back up on that because I think that sometimes this, you know, when we drill down on a particular area or something, it kind of like brings it to life. So she says, rather it means that nothing in the physical world can contain or limit the power of the human spirit. And we see this all the time, don't we? We see people who overcome, who overcome, and not only overcome, they show you that this moment is not going to contain me. That movie, not the movie, the series, the Underground Railroad. I watched another episode or so when I was trying to untangle my hair. And in there was a guy, I can't remember what his name was. Was it Jacob or anyway, he was basically recaptured by the slave catcher, and he was doing basically a hunger strike. He refused to eat. and in his refusal to eat on the way that they were in, while they were taking him back home, what he said to Cora, who is the main character in this the Underground Railroad, what he said to her is he was like, I'm free. He was like, they don't, basically, you don't have anything else. If I'm not dependent on you for me, for myself, he was like, then I am reclaiming the autonomy, my personhood, right? Because I've let this illusion of a body go. And so he stood in a different perspective or in a different space than where she did. And so I think it was a really powerful demonstration of what it means to detach yourself from the ways that we struggle to survive, though that way of struggling to maintain. So the woman may never regain her legs, the woman in the wheelchair, but she still has the power to decide whether being in the wheelchair will handicap her spirit. And this is the same thing for you. You have the ability to decide how the challenges that you face in your life is going to affect your spirit, right? So if your issue or your problem that you perceive as a problem is your weight, what role are you going to give that in your life? Like, at what level of consciousness, or how much of your energy are you going to allocate to that worry, to that problem, to the issue as you perceive it? And that's a question for all of us. How much, if going back to when I originally started some of this stuff, talking about that 100 watts of energy, if you think about that, you have been allocated per day 100 watts of energy. You got 45 of those watts that is dedicated just to your survival. So eating, drinking, sleeping, the normal stuff that you have to do. And then you have the remaining 55 watts that you have something to do with. How many of those watts are you going to allocate towards your judgments about yourself? And if you are allocating like 10, 20%, can you afford that? That becomes the question. Can you afford that power drain on your system to sit up and worry and think about things like that? And so the answer for so many of us is if we're already operating in a deficit, if we're already on the low run, we can't afford to give that much energy over to something like how much we weigh. So at a certain point, you might just decide, oh, I'm gonna make peace with this, because right here and right now, I might not be able to do anything about it, right? And it seems as though once that stop giving you that blame mechanism, once it stops being your what do you call it, when people have something that, well, I called it the devil yesterday, but there was this other thing where people needed some way to get out their anger or their aggression, so they go and kick the dog, or they have a what is it called? I don't know. Is it some kind of post or horse that you beat on or something like that? In order to get out some of the frustration, we have whipping things that we just whip on. And so if you take away that from your body, will your body then transform, because now you're seeing it different? And I'm talking about going a step further and not just transform your relationship with your body, but begin to love it. So then it comes alive with pleasure and joy, because now you see that it is something that is, that means you well, that is wonderful. Sometimes we love our cars more than we love our bodies. We love a whole lot of stuff more than we love ourselves. And we have to get to a point where we recognize that it is this thing, this love that we share, this part of ourselves that we give forth, that is a love that elevates. It just does. And so, people give their power to inanimate objects, and that becomes your golden calf. That becomes your idol that you are worshiping. And so why not change that around to something that is alive and can do something for you? Love on yourself, right? Ah, man. And sometimes it helps to just practice the gratitude, just bless yourself, bless your hair, bless who you are. And part of the reason why I do my hair blessings, and I'm saying, may whoever looks at me be blessed, right? Whoever makes contact with me be blessed. Whoever even thinks on me, right? May they be blessed. Because I want everybody to be just as happy and just as joyful as I feel on a day-to-day basis. And it's through that, right? It's through that cultivating of our own spirit that we really get to shine. So if she chooses to make the best of life in a wheelchair, she does far more than make a healthy psychological decision. She makes a spiritual decision that engages the full energies of the Sephiroth of Nazah and Had. Remember those two legs that we are standing on, those two big spiritual feet. And so even though she is in a wheelchair, when she activates that by making a decision to make the best out of this, to not be handicapped in her thinking or who she is, then she can go on from there. She tells a story about a woman that she met that came to one of her workshops named Ruth. Ruth, she said, was at one of her workshops, a week-long workshop in Mexico. And she said that she was out one morning, and she was kind of like, she goes through this thing about her morning and what she was doing when she notices that there was a woman sitting there in a wheelchair. And she says as she was sitting there thinking about her notes, how your mind kind of wanders. And she said that she started thinking about, how she manages to live in a body that is crippled. That was her thought. Like, I wonder how she's living in that body that's crippled. What is she feeling about it? And she says that the woman turns around and says, I bet you're wondering. And she was like, well, yeah, you caught me, right? How often do people catch us, in our talking? How often do people catch us and then we try to say, no, I wasn't thinking that? She was like, yeah, you caught me. I was. And the woman said, well, let me tell you about it. And it turns out that this woman was a 75-year-old woman. And as she said, that she was widowed at 38. She had 2 daughters, and she was very manipulative, right? She called it herself. It's not, sometimes we know what we do, right? Sometimes we do things and we feel as if we have no choice in it. Sometimes we do it knowing that we're doing it, but whatever the case may be, this woman owned the fact that she was a very manipulative person. And she says that, she had a fear of being left alone. So here she was, widowed, and she's got daughters. And there was a part of her that wanted to keep her daughters proximate, right, in the vicinity of her, keep them close so that they didn't wander off too far. But she says one of her daughters got involved in, now she, and this woman was Jewish, and she says one of her daughters joined a Buddhist community. And she says she was like, coming out of a Jewish tradition, and now you're Buddhist. And her whole conversation with her daughter was like, how could you do this to me? Like she was actually doing it to her. How could you do this to me, is what she was saying. And her daughter was just like, was taking it at first. And then she says her daughter then one day looked at her and says, Mom, are my clothes dirty? Am I unclean in some way? Am I doing anything at all that offends you, that actually offends you? And she says, I know, you must be on drugs. And her daughter said, well, I've done drugs, right? but not necessarily on them now. And so she asked her daughter, she was like, well, can you get me some drugs? Now, this is funny to me because a lot of times what happens is that um, my dad was like this, and I've met so many other people like this. Reverend Jackson used to say all the time, he was like, he used to have a lot of judgments about people who were on drugs, right? Druggies, drug heads, people who had addictions. He said he had all of these judgments about it. And then when he started experiencing, because he had prostate cancer, and he had prostate cancer for, let's say, 30 years. He had one that was just like that long-term thing. And so he had that prostate cancer. And so near the end of his life, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, it really started affecting him, right? Um, I, I don't know about his process before that, but I know at a certain point you started to see that there were changes, and that he was going through some changes. And so when I used to go over and see him, he would have these conversations with me, and sometimes his conversations would start off like, I used to have judgments about this stuff. And then he says, because of this cancer, I got me a marijuana card. And he says, and now I get it. He was like, I don't like the smell. There's a lot of stuff that's, that seems like, you could qualify it as negative, but he was like, now I get it. And so I used to laugh at him because all of a sudden he was like, now he turns into a pothead in his 80s or whatever. Um, but she asked her daughter, can you get me some drugs? And so she said that her daughter said yes, and went and got her some LSD. And so she said that she was 55 and she dropped acid for the first time. And she said, I nearly fell out of my chair. I could hardly picture, that's what she was saying. She said, I was so shocked. I nearly fell out of my chair because I couldn't picture her taking some LSD. And so the woman asked her, the woman in the wheelchair said, do you believe in angels? And she was like, well, of course I do. And so she was like, well, I had an out-of-body experience and I met my angel. And my angel told me that I was going to go through all of this, basically experience all of this, that she had been controlled by her fear. And her fear was keeping her in bondage, whether it was the fear of being alone or the fear of people's judgments. And the angel gave her a pair of scissors and told her to cut herself out of this fear. And so she says she could see this fear on her like rubber bands. And so she said that she ended up cutting all of these bands that was holding her or constricting her. And she was like, she felt more free than she had ever felt. And so it was like this exciting thing for her. And then she said, but she showed me then my future. And I saw myself full of arthritis, and she couldn't tell me why I would have to endure this condition, just that I would have to. But she said that she would be with me every step of the way. And she put me back into my body. I told my daughter everything that happened, and both of us laughed. And she said they laughed about it for a couple of months. And she says how close they got as a result of that. And then she says, I was far more crippled when I could walk. She was far more crippled when she could walk. I was always so afraid of being alone, of taking care of myself, that I wanted to keep my daughters near me so I would never have to take care of myself. But after that experience, I never felt afraid again. I believe that my physical condition was a way to remind me to never have fear. Now I talk to my angels every day, and I still laugh each day, now more than I did before. And so So it was so interesting because she was talking about this in respects to how we bind ourselves. We bind ourselves with the thoughts and the illusions. We create stories about what we think other people are thinking. And so, whether it is your fear of being alone, whether it's your fear of not being chosen, sometimes the reasons for that have absolutely nothing to do with what you believe they are. There's another lesson in A Course in Miracles. I talked about one yesterday. There's another lesson in the Course in Miracles that says, "I am never afraid for the reasons I think I am." And it's because we get caught up thinking that the motivation behind something is one thing, and in actuality it could be something totally different. So you may think that your issue, say for instance the issue with weight, you may think that it's all about the food that you eat, but it could be about something very different than what you may know. It could be about just this idea of the padding that I need to protect myself and keep myself safe. It may be something that you recreate, you would have created, even if it wasn't for the weight. We figure out ways to keep people at arm's length, keep people at bay, because we think that that is what keeps us safe. Her story here represents the choice to believe that the non-physical world of divine energy has more authority than the physical world of form and matter. This choice causes what might have been a handicap. This choice causes what might have been a handicap gradually to become more of a source of inspiration for her. Her limitations became an asset. And this is the influence of the Safaret of Nahaz and Nazah and Had, our own spiritual legs, our own spiritual 2 feet, right? And so when we have those fully up under us, we get to stand tall in the world. When you recognize the power and the energy that you have, that becomes your foundation. But if you are always thinking that it's something else or somebody else or something is missing or somebody, if you're always outside of yourself worrying about what's in somebody else's head, you never get to your center and work on your core, right? But you got to do the core work in order to be able to stand in that. And so the core work is not always easy, right? I talked about those exercises that they have me doing in yoga on that core. Those things are not always easy, but when you start doing it, when it's required, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to get ready. You don't have to sit there and like try to, shaking your way into standing up in your power. It becomes what you are normally doing. And then it seems like it's so much easier, right? So much easier to stay there than it is to get there. So that's why we do this exercise. That's why we do these things now, right? Deciding for ourselves about our own spirit. And, I think this is so wonderful because I want to, let me think. I want to give you another story, but maybe I should just push forward with hers because now she's talking about enhancing inner power. Reorder our lives when we choose spirit over illusions of physical circumstances, right? Give me I talked about our body parts. I talked about a butt. I talked about making peace. I talked about some of this stuff yesterday. And I talked about this idea of life props. So I got all of that stuff in. I'm like looking over this thing, thinking to myself, didn't I make a note on this yesterday? We reorder our lives when we choose spirit over the illusion of physical circumstances. So for me yesterday, in my example that I gave you about what happened to me yesterday, for me, what I heard is all things are working for my good. What I heard is this is going to be all right. And for me, that had more reality for me in the moment than what somebody was choosing to tell me. And so either I can get caught up in what somebody else's assessment is, or I can stand in my own. And that's always the choice that we have. Sometimes we don't have any evidence to the contrary. And that's part of the problem with so many of us, is that we want to have the facts. We want to have it on paper, in writing. We want to have it so that it, so that it is, we think that it is done. Like, is signed, sealed, or whatever. We want it factual. But wonder if we started recognizing that spirit, the world of spirit, is much more powerful than all of your factual stuff that you get into, right? Wonder if you stop for a minute and stop fretting over everything and just checked in. So yesterday, as this happened, I was like, when I was doing my journaling this morning, I was like thinking to myself, at what point did I because usually when something is about to happen in my life, I don't know about for you, but when something is about to happen for me, I usually get like an intuitive hit. Like I'll get something that'll say, don't go that way, or turn here, or, whatever. It'll be some kind of guidance when I'm supposed to make another choice. And I was like thinking to myself, like, did I have a moment of override? Did I override something and go in that direction when I should not have? And I kept thinking to myself, no, I didn't override anything. Right? I was present. I was conscious at the moment. And I was moving forward at the moment. And so when it happened, I didn't have a reason. I was like, I got this instant peace that said, this is going to be all right. It's going to work out. It's going to work out better than what you anticipated. And so I could stand in that peace. I could stand in that knowing and say, whoa, this is going to be good, right? Okay. I don't know what it's going to look like. But I know that in the moment, I had no reason to fret. Some years ago, I had this dog, Coco, my wonderful little dog. I don't have any pictures of Coco up there. But Coco was a little Shih Tzu that I got. And Coco had, like Shih Tzus do, Coco had problems with his breathing because he had one of those mashed in faces. And so he had this swallowing problem too. And the older he got, the worse the problem got. And so one day I had given him some food that I got from a party, and there was a Swedish meatball in there. And I cut it in half, but I didn't really cut it down into little bitty pieces. And Coco usually didn't eat when I wasn't in the room. He would wait until I was in the room before he ate his food. And so this particular time he was eating, and the meatball apparently got stuck in his throat. And I saw him, and he was doing, he was kind of making a thing. Now, I have done the Heimlich maneuver on my dog before and gotten something out of his throat. So I picked him up and I started doing this Heimlich maneuver on the dog, trying to get this meatball dislodged out of his throat. And I couldn't. And he was, there's this tendency when you can't get your hand in the mouth of somebody who is choking, because they will bite your hand off. And so, I don't care what it is. If you around me and something is happening to you, if I feel like your life is threatened, I'm gonna kill you trying to save your life. I will do that. And so I'm up there with this dog, and I started beating the dog, trying to get it to cough up this meatball, but there was just no. And so then I thought to myself, it's coming to me. I'm saying, okay, he's going to faint in a minute because he doesn't have air getting in his passageway. When he faints, I'm going to open up his mouth and I'm going to get this meatball out. And so I started fishing with my hand in his mouth as soon as he passed out, trying to get this meatball out. And I'm still beating him because I'm thinking to myself, I can get him back. I could get him back. And then I got the idea when that stuff wasn't working, when I couldn't get it out of his mouth, I got the idea like, okay, I'm gonna go in the kitchen and get something. And then something just came over me and just said, let him be. Like, he's gone, just let him be. And oh my God, you should have been able to hear me wailing from where you were, because it was this pressure, this presence that came over me and said, let him be. And I knew he was older. I knew, but I guess that was his exit. That was his exit point. And I just needed to be okay with that. And I held my little dog and I cried and I cried. I sat there with that dog all night, just wailing. And so sometimes I know that the conversation, when I say God speaks to me, sometimes that conversation, even it has been audible before where I've actually heard it through my ears, but sometimes you feel it in your being. And so there are moments when you get that direction to be at peace, to let something be, right? And so this part, the world that we cannot see, and it says this is a biblical thing. It says, that which appears comes with that which you do not see. I forget how it goes, but it is that there is an unseen hand, an unseen force that is operating in and through our lives at every moment. And sometimes I don't even have to pause for it. It's just acknowledging the fact that I heard it, that I received the message. And so at times, those moments are so hard to accept, especially around things like that, especially around a death, especially around something that seems like it's so final. But there is this peace that comes over you. They call it a peace beyond your understanding. There is an acceptance that we come to. And so in order for us to not get caught up in, the trauma of what's happening, or to further traumatize ourselves, sometimes we just have to take that deep breath and just relax in it and just be like, darn, this is hard, right? Darn it, this is what splat feels like sometimes. But just being able to sit in that. So we reorder our lives when we choose spirit over the illusion of the physical circumstances. And with each choice we make, we either be more involved with the illusory physical world, the world around us, or we invest energy into the power of our own spirit. And so being able to acknowledge, being able to tap into that is a powerful thing. So each of the 7 chakras represents a different version or manifestation of this one essential lesson. Each time we choose to enhance our internal power, we limit the authority that the physical world has on over our lives, our bodies, our minds, our spirits, how we feel about ourselves, the faith that we have in the moment. Every time we're cultivating something. And so and from an energy standpoint of view, she says every choice that enhances our spirit, it strengthens our energy field. And the stronger our energy field, the fewer of our connections to negative people and experiences, or those things are transformed. So a lot of times what we do is even our motivations, the Course in Miracles says that man is generous out of his own self-interest. And so sometimes our motivations, though, we really have to work on our motivations. What motivates you to do the things that you do, to say the things that you say, to invest your time or experience into things? Is it, what motivates you? Is it the physical world or is it the spiritual world? Because one of the things that I have, I think was I talking to my cousin about this yesterday? I was talking to y'all about this yesterday, that abscess I was talking about. So when I realized that part of me, a part of what I needed to do was this giving of my milk. If this is giving of my milk and sharing, and I'm having a physical manifestation, something that is set up in my body, a dis-ease that is occurring. My Louise Hay book told me that one right there with the rainbow on it. My Louise Hay book told me that I was not giving of my milk. That was why I was having a problem with my boob. And so I needed to give of my milk. I figured out my milk was this conversation that I'm having, this sharing, this outpouring of spirit. It's not about financial stuff for me, right? It is because I have to give. I have to talk. And so when I recognize that, then it's not about the physical world. It's not about what you think about me. It's not about whether or not I'm making money or I'm better than somebody or trying to be, it's not about all of that. It is about that this becomes part of who I am. This is the outpouring of my spirit in the world, right? And so you have to figure out what is yours, right? And then do that. And if you make it about the money, or if you make it about the physical world, how do people, I want to be famous, I want to be that. If you make it about that, that gets you off of the mark. One of the things that Jesus said in the book, and I'm not trying to be preachy about this or anything, but one of the things that he said is when you pray in private, right? Because when you pray in public for other people to see, then you will have your just reward. You will have the opinions of others that you were seeking after. But you pray in private and God will reward you publicly. And so what I see is that people have actually acted like God was on Facebook. Or God is Facebook. We type in the window and all of this other stuff. And it's like, didn't he say, wasn't this one of the directives? Right? But what we do instead is we're after the opinions of others so that other people think we're so good, right? Yeah. I mean, it's cool to ask for prayer, but when we start acting like there's some kind of Facebook God, I don't get that. I don't get it. I don't get it. Right? I don't get it. So, yeah, I'm gonna leave that there now. She says she met Penny at a workshop, and Penny had already started reconstructing her life on her own and had been married for 18 years to a man with whom she had a business partnership. She was the brains of the operation, but she was also an alcoholic, a condition that suited her husband just fine because he was an alcoholic too. He wanted her to drink because keeping Penny semi-conscious gave him more control over the marriage and over the business. Now, it's so interesting. When we are in our crippled state, we find and attract the people who have a desire, one, to be needed, and who basically push us, right? Sometimes it'll be people who may want to, whatever, hook themselves to that thing or another. It's always interesting to me, though, how we find. Let me give y'all an example of this, right? Because sometimes it's funny to me how these things work. sometimes we go out and we could be dressed to the nines. We thinking we looking good, right? And don't nobody holler at us. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but then when you get and you messed up, right? Broke down from the flow down, right? You looking like, because sometimes that's what I do. I'm out there working in my yard. I'm all dirty and grungy and all of that stuff, and I got to run to Home Depot and whatever stops I make. It's like people be hollering at me like, "Hey, girl," you thinking to yourself like, "Dude, do you really, really?" And it's because some people will, when you look too good, you people don't act as if like, yeah, that person is here in this place, and I'm not there in that place, and so I'm gonna wait till they come down a notch. Or even it's just that at the time that sparks their interest because this is a person for whatever reason that looks more approachable, right? And so it's very interesting how people will want you in a particular state. They will want you in that broke down looking state, because that's the level at where they can handle it. Good morning, Sarika. That's the level at where they can handle it. But when you're in and you're showing forth as, in your power and your strength, your core, all of that stuff, they like, yeah, right? So this is just like I was telling y'all about people dumbing down for people, right? So if you dumb down for a person and you don't have these conversations, if you don't have stuff that really activates your soul, when you're not standing in that, then sometimes people get confused about what you expect, your expectancy. And so if who you are is important for you, good morning, Nadine. If who you are is important for you, then you got to show up in your fullness. That means speaking your truth and not watering it down for somebody else. Because what happens is snapback happens. And while at one moment it may have seemed like you could deal with something, right? The truth of the matter is that once you get there into that situation and you figure out, you know what, this is not working, it's because you didn't show up in your truth in the first place. So we have to be in our truth, who we are, and we've got to consistently be there, not because we're showing up that we're better than somebody else, but because we're showing up as our true self. So our energy field is important, and not being wavering back and forth like we don't know who we are. We gotta be ye transformed by a renewing of your mind, right? Not by the world, but a renewing of your mind. And then you can have that real experience of living in your truth. I don't know. Yeah, this is I really wanted to back up off of this enhancing the power thing, because I really want to take that story in its entirety. And I knew we were at the bottom of the hour. It's time for me to get off of here. And I will come back and start this over again, talking about Penny tomorrow. And then as we talk about Penny, I'm gonna put start here. And 6:26. And then we'll come back and talk about Penny a little bit and work our way through that. But there, I think that it is a wonderful thing to know thyself. I mean, this has been something that has been passed down, and then we didn't recognize it or know it. And and what does that mean? Knowing oneself. When you know yourself, when you accept yourself, that enhances this power that is you. And if you like being wimpy, you don't even need to be in this part of the book. But if you really want to enhance your power, um, we could think on these things. Think on these things. And if nothing else, I have talked about the transformative power of doing mirror work. And what's mirror work? If you have not been listening to me for a while, I used to always talk about mirror work, especially. Yeah, especially before. When I went into therapy when as a result of a rape, went into therapy, and so I had a few things that I needed to work on. But my main thing that I needed to work on was this idea of self-love. Now, I would tell you that my therapist had me write contracts to myself to agree to, just basically just to test out to see if things were true, right? Um, and you could do this with yourself. You can am I really powerless to make decisions for myself? Am I powerless over food, or am I powerless in relationships? Am I powerless? Well, you can ask yourself the question, are you powerless to make a decision? And so sometimes that the question requires an action. So I had to answer my own question. Do am I powerless over sugar, or do I get to make choices for myself in my life? Can I give it up? And it's like, you darn straight I can. I'm running this. This is what I said to myself. I'm running this. So if my contract is that I was not going to put any sugar in my body for a week, I could do that because I'm Sandra, damn it, right? And and so we could do that with any number of things, because it becomes about knowing that there is something within you that has the ability to make a decision and stand by it, that there is no authority that is making you put something in your mouth that you don't want. There is nothing that requires that of you. And so just trying to see the power of your mind means that you make decisions about certain things. And that was what I did. And I did that with a whole bunch of stuff. I still do. Because I basically don't like to feel like I'm powerless over anything. So I do exercise my authority over me by saying, I will not do A, B, or C for a given period of time. And then I can decide whether I'm going to continue with that. Some people, it will be sugar. Some people, it will be sex. Some people, it will be not spending any money. Some people, it will be a number of any. If you want to test yourself on something, I won't complain, or I won't say any negative stuff, or I won't make any judgments. Write a contract with yourself, and then say, for a period of time, give yourself 1 week or 1 day. Sometimes it's an hour. Sometimes it's an hour without saying anything negative. That's a challenge for a person. If you can go for an hour, you can go for 24. If you can go for 24, you can go for 48. If you can go for 48, you can go for a whole doggone week. Make a contract with yourself. The other thing is that that mirror work was so important, because what she said to me was, I want you to go and look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror, in your eyes. And I want you to tell yourself, I love you. And I was like, I can't do that, right? So I go in there and I look in the mirror. When I get home, I look in the mirror and I look at that woman looking back at me, and I was like, I started with you were a thief. You, you had sex with this person. And your thighs are too big. I was berating myself and cutting myself down about all of this stuff. And after I sat there with that crap, I finally looked and I said, and I love you. Damn it. I was so mad. I was so mad at her. How can I say that I loved her? Because there was so much wrong with her. But I had to look at that woman in the mirror looking back at me and say, I love you. So, she told me I had to do it 10 times. So I did 10 times. And that was a whole week. And then I go back to her. And then she was like, well, did you do it? This was my contract with myself, right? Did you do it? Yeah, I did it. I did it. Damn, I did it. 7 days of 10 times a day saying, I love you. And she says, okay. She was like, now take your little contract. And I want you to write in there that I want you to do it 100 times a day. And I was like, what? 100 times a day? So, are you? She was like, yeah, 100 times a day. And she was like, and I'll see you in another week. Next Tuesday, right? Now I got to go home. And now I got to look at this woman again in the mirror. And so now your thighs aren't so bad, I guess, right? You know, and I get why you stole that lip gloss. I mean, it was just something to do, right? Just, okay, so I love you. That was what I was like. Okay, I love you. So then I did it, and and I did it, and I did it. And it was like, it was so funny because I don't know when, but it just got easier, easier because I wasn't sitting up there with all that dialogue that was going on in my head that was telling me about all the stuff that was wrong with me. I just, all right, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then I go, I love you, I love you. I was just doing it like, popping in it. I love you. Because I was trying to get them in. Let me just get these damn things in. And so, next week I go back and I did it. And she was like, okay, let's keep it up. Let's keep it up. Like next week, just, ramp it up a little bit. And so, driving down in the street in the car, I'm looking in the mirror like, I love you. I was just doing it everywhere. And so at a certain point, I guess it just something clicked. Just like that. I started understanding that, one of the things that the artist way, Julia Cameron said in her book is she says that we do the best that we can with the light we have to see by. And so at the time when I did all the stuff that I was judging, I was doing the best that I could with the light that I had to see by. A friend of mine's, we were friends. Let me tell you what her name is. I can't even think of her name at the moment. She used to be the director of CMHA here in Cleveland. Can't even think of her name. It's been so long. Anyway, she was on trial, and I was, me and Vale, a few other people. We had just, while she was on trial, we had just made a commitment to be there every day with her while she was going through her trial. And I keep wanting to call it Claire Freeman. That's her name. We had made a commitment to be there every day through her trial with her. And so, we go into court and, and she was, she was doing the best that she could on any given day. And I remember one day she came in there and I was looking at her and I was like, Claire, I was like, I said, that sweater. I started touching on her sweater and, she had spots on her sweater and she looks down and she was like, oh girl, she was like, I got dressed in the closet because she was telling me about who was at her house and, her daughters, her grandkids were at the house and she was, Shawnee's kids, I think it was. And she was talking about how she had to get dressed in the dark. And she was like, I didn't even look at this. And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. And I was like, I'm just standing there like thinking to myself, like, okay. And then the line came to me that we do the best that we can with the light we have to see by, sometimes all we can do is see dimly into any situation. We don't see the fullness of it. We see dimly. We see what we can see at the moment. And we got to give ourselves, some credit. We can't see into the future. We don't know what this is going to turn out with. You didn't know when, the moment that something was, I didn't know that that manhole cover, my car wouldn't clear it. I couldn't see that. I couldn't, I just trusted that, whoever left it exposed knew that a car could clear it. You don't know that this is that pop, that time is going to get you pregnant, or you don't know that, this is going to be the last time you see that person. You don't know. And so with the light that you have the light that you have to see by, we do the best we can in that moment. And we just got to trust that that's good enough, because it really is. All right. So be easy on yourself. Do some mirror exercises. If you want to write a contract with yourself, write a contract with yourself. And if you want to tell some other responsible person that you got this contract, so that they can say, hey, you did good, attaboy. But if you want to hold it to yourself and just make the contract with yourself, I get that too, right? Because sometimes I do that. My thing of not eating meat ain't about nobody but me and my stuff. So when I stopped eating meat, it wasn't like I needed to write a contract anymore. Damn it, I make a decision and I stand by it, right? And then you can change your mind too, right? You can decide, you know what, I have done like 90 days without having sex with random strangers. I am officially not addicted. That is not my thing. But I'm just saying, for example, you can make that decision. That's yours to make, right? So anyway, I'll be here tomorrow. Same time. We will be moving into this story about Penny and enhancing your power. I am so grateful for you. You guys, please, thank you, Nadine, and who else? Sarika. Yeah, it helps when you like or when you share these videos. It improves the algorithms. It does something. So at the very least, just give me that attaboy or whatever. Not because I need it, but because there's something I want to do with this later on. I mean, I want to, I'm not just doing it. I love you in this moment, right? But what I really would love is that these things, that this, what did we used to say at church? Go forth and multiply this consciousness. If we just leave it here without doing anything with it, it's just it's just that. But you got to go and multiply this consciousness, share it, or even share the ideas, even if you want to go share the ideas, right? Say to somebody else, go do some mirror exercises. I mean, just whatever. But yeah. Thank you. Namaste to you as well. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be here, and we'll see what's up with my do. All right. Love you. See you. Bye.